Have you ever watched a room go completely silent the moment someone simply stops talking? What really happens when you go silent? Not out of fear or politeness, but on purpose, as if refusing to play the game. Have you ever noticed how your occasional unavailability makes people uneasy? Not the awkward kind, but the intentional kind. The kind that stops the flow, breaks the rhythm, and forces the world around you to adjust. It's not because you've disappeared, but because you've stopped playing your part. In that moment, something shifts. That moment of absence, it cracks open everything we take for granted. What's really happening when you become absent? When you speak, you follow a script, you answer questions, you feel pauses, you play your part. But when you stop, you break the script, you interrupt the flow of words and expectations. In Lacan's language, you shake the symbolic order, the structure of language, laws and norms that shape our reality. Suddenly, you're not just another voice. You become a force that disturbs the scene. Let's go back to the question again. Why does silence make people uneasy? Because it exposes the real, not reality. The real is that part of reality that resists clear explanation. It's raw, it's chaotic, it's beyond reality. It's what language can't capture. It's a gut feeling or a nightmare. You can maybe talk about it, but it's useless because you can never put it into words. When you break the rules of conversation, the real pushes through the cracks. In a way that you don't really understand, you can't really describe, but you can feel it. It builds tension. And here's the twist. Stepping into that tension risks your sense of self. Because subjectivity, our identity, lives in our words, our roles, our stories, the stories we tell. But Lacan shows us something else. He says the subject is a lack, a gap. We're never whole, we're always missing something. In silence, that missing piece gazes back at us. And that's why it's both cathartic and risky. Because silence isn't about disappearing, it's about showing that lack, revealing the split inside every person. You stop being present and the world shakes around you. It's like stepping outside a party you're supposed to love and realizing you don't even like the music. You become unavailable and the world starts seeking you. You're not invisible, you're impossible to ignore. That's the power. And that's exactly the risk. Because when you cut off your own voice, you might lose your place in the system. You might feel lost. You feel as if you're in control, but it's just you challenging the order around you without fully breaking it. But in that attempt, you see something real. Imagine not answering that midnight call, or telling your coworker, "I can't stay late tonight," or simply pausing before you respond. You disrupt their habit of using you to fill their drama. You force them to face their own emptiness, You force the real to expose itself. The meaninglessness of it all. That might sound harsh, but Lacan would say, desire is the desire of the other. It's meaningless because what we're desiring never is ours to begin with. It will never be. When you're always accessible, you fuel their desire, but you lose your own. So by going offline, you're making your own desire to be the desire of them desiring you. I know it sounds wordy and stupid, but that's just the way it is. Lacan would shake in his grave at these words because desire is never something you can define or control. You're mostly even unaware of it. You don't even know what your desire is. But we can at least influence it. When you step back, you shift the power. They start chasing you. They start wondering what you want. Let me ask you, isn't it more satisfying to be pursued than to chase? Every time you hold back, you reclaim a bit of yourself, that spark of pleasure and life that flows when you honor your own desire, even if you're not consciously aware of it. Every yes you say when you mean no erases part of you, the thing that is you.
Tu as besoin de moi?
No.
Si.
Ever swallowed your anger to keep things peaceful? Sure, it felt easier in that moment, but did it feel right? When you say yes to avoid conflict, you give up a piece of yourself. You hand over your boundaries. And for what? To look nice? To keep the peace? Yes, that works sometimes. And sometimes you have to do it. But you also have to realize that's self-abandonment, not kindness. You think being needed makes you whole, gives you meaning. But it doesn't. Every forced yes betrays your true desire. Lacan says it this way. The symbol manifests itself first of all as the murder of the thing. The moment you fit yourself into someone else's symbol, you kill the raw you kill the real thing, or in Freud's word, you kill the sting. And you end up tired, empty, frustrated. Why? Because you're fueling their fantasy, not your own. You silence your own voice to fill someone else's lack. Why do we keep doing it? Maybe we fear their reaction, their rejection. Maybe we learned that saying no is rude. Maybe we crave approval. But each time you override your desire, you basically sign away your freedom. You become predictable. You become a vending machine that always drops a soda, no coins needed. And people start to expect it. But remember that silence isn't some sort of magic. You can't escape the symbolic order entirely. You can't escape your city, your community, your society and go live in a cave. That's not possible unless you're insane. Because we live in language, in rules, in relationships. The moment you go offline, the other, the big other, will push back. They will start asking questions. They'll try to pull you back into the old script. They'll tell you, what's wrong? Or why so quiet? They fear the real they glimpse beneath your silence. They fear the gap in the structure. They fear the truth that nobody is whole, and that fear can make them angry, can make them insecure. So if you try silence, be ready. If you want to be inaccessible, be ready for discomfort. Be ready for tension. Be ready for questions and maybe even accusations. but also for freedom. Because every moment you choose not to react, you claim a part of yourself. The symbolic is the order of language of the law of the Father, and it is in this order that the subject is alienated. Alienated means cut off from yourself. You become a performer from day one. Every quick answer, every forced laugh, every polite nod, puppet moves that keep you locked in. Your family, friends, co-workers, society, culture, rules, and norms, they are the audience, and you dance. But is it your dance or theirs? You can't escape the symbolic order, you have to dance. But at least you can bend it. You can take some rest. When you don't play along, when you pause, the other, the social order around you, gets thrown off. It starts poking you. It tries to put you back into the story. Why? Because your presence is needed to cover its own emptiness. It lets the real burst through. The raw, unnameable stuff they try to ignore by projecting onto you. You're not disappearing, you're reshaping the space. When you break the routine, you crack open a new possibility. They panic, they argue, they overreact. Not because you're wrong, but because you stopped reflecting them. You became a spark of something different. And in that difference, you ignite change. Forget the self-help slogans. Find your true self. Unlock your inner power. Getting back to your true self. They promise a clean, shiny you hiding inside. Lacan would laugh. That true self? It's not a prize waiting under a rock. It's a messy void, a gap that's always there. But you have to acknowledge this gap. You have to appreciate this gap, because you don't exist outside language and symbols. They're your playground, your prison, and your life. Forgetting about them outright, you will become insane. You will become lost, disconnected from the shared reality. Stop chasing some final revelation of your pure essence. You can't just drop off the grid or ghost your friends. But you can change your role in the play without pretending you can leave the stage. It's about owning the gap, the lack, that flicker of unattainable desire, and using it to steer the game differently and not to victimize yourself. You're learning to stand in your crack and to make that space yours. You're learning to endure the burn of not being whole, and yet to move and to breathe, to speak anyway. And here's the hard truth. You will never be fully understood. You will never fully understand yourself. You will never be completed by another person, and you will never be complete in yourself. But that's not tragedy. That's called life. Because once you stop waiting for completion, you become dangerous in the best way possible. You stop being a prop in someone else's story. You stop chasing after every validation because that's chasing rainbows. You begin to generate meaning instead of begging for it. When you hold your silence, when you pause, when you refuse to fill the gap too quickly, you invite reality in. Not the packaged version, not the glossy simulation, but the raw, flickering beauty of a world that doesn't owe you wholeness, doesn't owe you anything, but gives you fragments to dance with. Then you'll start appreciating what Milan Kundera called the unbearable lightness of being. It won't always feel good. Sometimes you'll feel abandoned. Sometimes you'll feel monstrous. You will lose some people. You will terrify others. But every time you choose to resist being perfectly readable, every time you let a gap breathe between you and the other, you carve out a tiny, shaking, undeniable place for your desire to exist. And maybe that's all we ever really get. Not wholeness and not peace, but a small flickering fire that says, here I am, incomplete, alive and still burning.